Parshas Tazria, chapter 12, verse 1. Vayidaber Adonai al Moshe Mor. So God spoke to Moses, saying, Isha, hold on, where is this? Oh, here we go. Isha ki Tazria, the Yolda Zachar. If a woman well, the word Tazria means to sow, but it means if she will be, if a woman will conceive and she'll give birth to a male, Vitama Shivas Yamim, and she will be ritually impure for 7 days. Kimeni das devosat titma. According to the days of her flow, she will be ritually impure. Meaning to say, just like if she's a Nida woman, she's tameh for 7 days. So too, after she gives birth, she's tameh for 7 days. This is called tumat leda. The tuma, the ritual impurity from having given birth. It's 7 days. Let's see what Rashi says. Amar Rebbe Simwai. Actually, we're about to get to the most famous quotation of Rebbe Simwai in the Daf Yomi. That says Rebbe Simwai does not say a lot in the Talmud. He's rarely in the Talmud. But we're about to see Rebbe Simwai on the bottom of 23b. Rebbe Simwai taught that there were 613 commandments that were said to Moshe. 365 prohibitions, like the days of the sun, and 248 positive commandments, like the limbs of a person. And the numerical value is Torah Tzivalanu Moshe Morasha. And the numerical value of Torah is 611. And then there were 2 additional commandments: I am Hashem your God, and Hoyelecha. They heard that directly from God. Anyway, that's the other quote from Rabbi Simlai in the Talmud. But now we have this teaching of Rabbi Simlai. What does Rabbi Simlai say? Kishem sheyitziraso shel adam achar kol behema chayav ha'of. Just like man was created after animals were created, k'maaseh b'maaseh bereshis, in the account of creation, kach Torah nisparsha achar Torahs. So too, the laws of a man, meaning the ritual impurity of a woman, are explained after the Torah of an animal is explained. In the previous portion, we're told who is kosher, what's kosher animal, and what's not kosher animal. And once we do that, then we're going to describe what is the law of a man. So that's the Rashi says. That's Rashi. Okay. Says he Tazria, when a woman conceives, Rabos she'afilu yuladeto machoy, even if she gave birth to this creature who was dissolved, even if he wasn't a form. It was like, like a membrane or like an embryo that was not solid. Shenimcha, that his features were dissolved. V'nase kein zera, and he just looked like fluid. Still, if the woman basically she miscarries, shepsel, we go back 2 bookcases and you'll get to it. Then imo tameoleda, meaning to say she doesn't have to give birth to an actual child. She just can give birth to a embryo, even in its fluid form, and that will be considered like she gave birth, and then she'll be tameh for 7 days from tumas, what's called tumas leda. So we're in chapter 12, verse 2, studying with you in person, but your wife is on the Zoom, Shepsel. So Kimeni das devosat titma. Like the days of her flow, she will be ritually impure. Rashi says, Kiseder kol tuma, in the order of all impurity that are stated by a nida, mitama betumas leda. Afilu niftach hakever bodam. Meaning to say, Rashi says she becomes ritually impure through the childbirth, even if, let's say, she does not have any blood. She gives birth without blood. I'm assuming it's possible, but I've never seen that. But let's say she gave birth without blood. I'm sure it's very rare. Then, then she would still be considered ritually impure, meaning it's irrespective of the blood. Kimeni das devosa, like the laws of the Nida woman during her infirmity. She says devosa means something that flows from her body, like the flow of the Nida woman. Alternatively, that devosa means madveh, infirmity, v'choli, and illness. She'eni sharo adam shalo techaleh, because when the woman sees blood, she becomes sick. Rosha ve'evarek ve'dinoel, and her head and her limbs are feeling heavy upon her. So the word is either referring to the flow or the illness of the woman when she has some flu emanating from her body. Okay. So the Kotzker Rebbe asks the question, how is it possible that this woman who's the source of life becomes tamei? The key to life is in the hands of God. He doesn't give it over even to an agent. That's what we learned. There are three keys God does not give over. We learned this at the end of Sanhedrin. And one is the key to childbirth. So how is it possible that the ritual impurity will stem from this? So the Kotzker says the tumah, the impurity, comes not from the birth, but from after the birth, the feeling of the lack of the life. The Shem Shmuel says that he says something similar, that this is the reason why there's ritual impurity when it comes to a death, because when the soul departs, that allows the forces of impurity to dwell there. And it's the same thing by a birth. When God, since God himself was the one who opened it, when the divine presence departs, then the ritual powers of impurity are able to be attached. So just like with a death, the soul departs, and that's when ritual, so the tumah rests there. So too with a birth, once God departs, because God is part of the birthing process, that's when the tumah will come. And in this context, I could quote, there's a Balaturim I'm going to say about this. The Balaturim says like this. Let me just read this. Chapter 13. The Balaturim it brings to mind the Balaturim. The Balaturim says the following. Actually, not chapter 12. He says, in chapter 12, verse 2, hold on one second, let me write this down. The Baal Turim says, "V'tameh shivas yamim." Why is she tameh for 7 days? V'chein shivat yamei avilut. Also the 7 days of mourning. Kol mat sheba kein yilech. And so too with the 7 days of mourning, as it says in the verse, exactly as he came, so shall he depart. So the Baal Turim draws this connection explicitly between the mourning period and that she's tameh, you're tameh when you touch a dead body, or you mourn for 7 days. So too, when the baby is born, there's a departure. You have to ritually impure for 7 days. He connects the two. But we're talking here about the woman is ritually impure. So the verse is about to say that first, but what's your point? The baby is not ritually impure. The mother is. Yeah. Yeah, it's for sure. But it's also like the red heifer, that when you're involved in creating something so powerful, so pure, then like the people who purify, who are involved in the process of the red heifer, they all become tamei. So it's the same idea that even if you're involved in something that's all good, you have some of the tumah that attaches to you. And there's always, no matter how pure, there is some part of that process which lends itself to impurity. And even in birth, I mean, you see that no matter how pure it is, there might have been some aspect of the relationship that lent itself to impurity. That may be through the conception or the courtship or the relationship or the pregnancy, some aspect of it that maybe was caused impurity to descend. Okay, and now Shepsel correctly points out, then it says, Ubayom Hashmini Yimol Basaro. So on the eighth day, that you shall circumcise the flesh. Now I can't help. Why is it on the eighth day? So first of all, this is Makor Baruch says, why do we need 7 days to establish that the child is healthy, and we circumcise him only on the eighth day? And by a pigeon ben, we need to wait 30 days. Because wouldn't we say most of the time that if the child lives 7 days, he's going to live 30 days? So why by the circumcision we follow the majority, but by pigeon ben, we wait 30 days. So by circumcision, by pigeon ben, basically, you're taking money from somebody else. So there you have to be more certain. We can't just follow the majority. When you want to take somebody else's money, by the bris, we follow the majority. Majority of children are healthy. But when it comes to taking somebody else's money, you need to be certain, or else you can't get the money. The Yalkut Yehuda gives a different explanation. He says this shows the greatness of Shabbos, that a baby cannot be circumcised until he goes through a Shabbos, as it says, "Ben shmonas yamim yimolachem." So, meaning to say that the reason the circumcision is on the eighth day is so that he has at least one Shabbos before the circumcision, and that's because it is through Shabbos that he becomes sanctified, and then he becomes worthy to come into the Kedusha of the Jewish people. So that's the possession of the Yalkut Yehuda. Another explanation of the Yalkut Yehuda, another explanation of Rabbeinu Bechaya is, why is circumcision on the eighth day? Is because circumcision is like a sacrificial offering. It says, Karti Briti Alai Zevach. Meaning to say, just like the blood of the sacrifice on the altar is for an atonement, so to the blood of the circumcision also serves as an atonement. And so therefore it's a mitzvah on the eighth day, because a korban can't be brought, an animal can't be sacrificed until the eighth day. And so therefore, so too, the baby whose blood is serving as an atonement, we see this in the Ezekiel, it says, so the blood is an atonement. So just like an offering can't be done until the eighth day, also the baby. The custom is to say, the same way you entered into the bris, so you shall enter into Torah, Chuppah, Masim, Tovim. Why do we only say this by a circumcision? Because this mitzvah, once you do this mitzvah, you can never separate from it, pretty much. Once you're circumcised, you're pretty much stuck with it. So therefore, we bless the child also with other commandments. They don't separate. My grandfather once told me this following story. He said there was a man, he was walking down the aisle to his wedding, and he was wearing a diaper. Just wearing a diaper, nothing else. He said to him, so the people said to him, why are you wearing a diaper? He said, because when I was born, they said the same way you enter into the bris, so you shall enter into chuppah. So therefore, that was my grandfather's joke. Okay, I'll just do one more about this. Um, by the Kotzker, uh, there was the following story. He says, just like, why do we say, just like you enter in Torah chuppah masim tovim? He says, just like at the bris, the baby at the bris is free of any arrogance. He has no foreign thought. He's pure. So too, he should enter into Torah and chuppah with purity of thought, purity of purity. So Rav Hirsch Migarbert said, I always thought of a different explanation. He said, just like you enter into the circumcision to turn from being to become being a Jew, to turn your fate from being uncircumcised into a circumcised Jew, so too you enter Torah and chuppah to turn from being unchecked, impure into somebody of pure thought, pure action, and pure thought. So I'll just do one more. There's so many beautiful things about this that it's hard to stop once you see these explanations about the bris. One more explanation. It says that the custom is to make the Suda a meal on the day of the circumcision. So what's the source for this custom? So the source for this custom is, it says in the Gemara, why does it say circumcision should be on the 8th day? Because I guess we want the baby to be a little bit better or something like that. We know the Gemara says that we don't want everybody to be happy and the mother and the father are sad. So therefore, and everybody there is happy with the meal. And so therefore, this is a source for this idea. Okay, back to it's too hard to just do this. So, we'll never stop. Once we go down this rabbit hole, they have so many explanations. So back to the text of the Gemara, of the Torah, it says, excuse me, and this is always a little bit confusing. It says, that after a woman gives birth to a boy, she's tamei for 7 days, and then 8 days of circumcision, and the next 33 days after the 7 days, she is tahor, she's ritually pure. Meaning to say, even if she bleeds, and obviously she will be bleeding because she just gave birth, nevertheless, that blood is pure blood. She's not impure. It's called dam leda. And dam leda is tamei for the first 7 days, and then for the next 33 days is pure. And it says, b'chol kodesh lo toga. But even though she is pure, she is still what's called mechusar kippurim. She's only partially pure. She's lacking a complete atonement because it states the chokodesh lo tiga, v'hamikdash lo tavo ad melosi tara, that she will not be able to come and touch any sacred item or come into the temple until she completes her days of ritual purity. So Rashi says, Ein teshev el lashon akava, meaning to say she stays in her status of pure blood. B'dmei tara, aval pi sheroah, even though she sees blood, she is tahora, she is pure. Yemei tara, yemei torah, or days of purity. The whole kodesh, she cannot touch anything sacred, including truma, because this woman is immersed of an extended day. So what's going on here? Rashi says it's as though she immersed herself at the end of the 7 days. Normally, when a person is ritually impure, they immerse, and then nightfall they are pure again. But this woman, even though she immersed and then the sun set, nevertheless, Ein shimsha mariv tara ad shkiat hachama shel yom arba'im. Shel machar taviet kaparat tara. She only really becomes pure after the sun sets on the 40th day, and then the next day she has to go to the temple, and she can go to the temple and bring her offering. But she's in a almost pure status for the next 33 days. She can be with her husband. She doesn't make anybody tameh, but she is not able to enter into the temple or eat sacred food. This is a negative commandment for one who eats. She cannot eat it. But if she gives birth to a female, then she will be tameh for 2 weeks. So if it's a female, it's double. A male was tameh for 7 days, and then the blood is pure, but she can't go into the temple for 33 days. For a female, everything is doubled. She's tameh for 14 days, and then the blood is pure for 66 days, and then after that, she can bring an offering in the temple. That's an interesting thing. It doesn't tell us in the Talmud why it's doubled. In the Torah, it doesn't tell us why. And I don't believe it tells us in the Talmud either. Yeah. Because a woman, she can procreate, and she can bear children at a higher level. Whereas women can get the woman, so that there's a great, I think Rabbi Hirsch maybe says that, but that's almost like a modern explanation that the holiness that's lost is even greater. Oh, Ramosha, oh, Avarye, Reb Levi. So that almost as though the holiness that's lost is greater when the female is born. But that's what's called, like, I mean, it's kind of like dicta. It's like not exactly written into the text. It's like an inference from the text, right? What would they call that in the legal works? It's like it's like dicta, right? Isn't that called dicta, Jeff? Dicta. Yeah, we're in a different context. Foundation. Right. So now this next verse will be something that I want to show you something special about this next verse. The krivu, if you haven't heard this, this is worth the price of admission, which is actually nothing, but still, it says when the woman completes her days of purity for a boy or girl, she has to bring an olah offering, which is a sheep. And a dove, a young dove, or a turtle dove for a sin offering, a Pesach or Moed offering. But here we have a very interesting, even though we're doing Rashi, I can't help but bring in this powerful Balaturim here. Powerful. Have you heard the Balaturim on this pasuk? Has anybody heard the Balaturim on this pasuk? Wow. Once you hear this, you'll never be able to forget it. The Balaturim asks, everywhere else in the Torah, when it mentions what's called a turtle dove and a young dove, it always mentions a tor first. A tor is the turtle dove, and the ben Yonah is the young dove. It usually mentions the turtle dove and then the young dove, like the mature bird, and then the baby bird. Here it mentions the baby bird first, and then the mature bird. Means say the woman has the option of bringing one of the following: one of either a ben Yonah, which is a baby bird, or a tor, which is an adult bird. Normally, when the Torah gives the worshiper, the person bringing the sacrifice, that option, it usually mentions the adult bird first. This is the only time in the Torah that the baby bird is mentioned first. Why? So this is, did anybody ever hear this? This is what the Baal Term says. Kol makom maktim torim v'nei Yonah chutz mikan. Why? Because the difference here is you're only bringing one bird. V'im yimtza Yonah lo yikach tor. So Baal Term is saying if you have the ability to take the baby bird, then don't take the adult bird. Why? He says because the birds, these doves, have a mate, and when they get married, the doves mate for life. And when one of them is killed, if you take the adult bird and just take one, then the other one will be despondent forever and will never remarry. So this is out of compassion for the bird, for the spouse. Did you ever hear of such a thing ever in the Torah? The baby bird is not mated yet, so therefore, no, I'm saying he's not leaving behind anyone who cares. The spouse is not caring, but the adult bird, if you take the spouse, the bird, the Mr. Bird or Mrs. Bird, is going to be very sad for the rest of its life. And so therefore, all things being equal, you should prefer to take the baby bird. The what? Right. The Midrash says the Torah is faithful to its mate in the extreme. It will not take a second partner even after its mate has died. The Yonah, however, although it's faithful during its mate's lifetime, will take another partner if the mate has died or is lost. And as a consequence of the greater fidelity displayed by the adult Torah, it is the mature bird of that species which merits being used as an altar offering. Well, no, we don't believe that you can't kill animals. We believe you can kill animals, but we feel that it has to be purposeful, and even when you kill them, it has to be done with compassion, with compassion. Anyway, there's a lot going on here, but we'll have to stop now to pick this up, God willing. We have a minion. I also want to say, I know some people, the people have spoken. People have said to me,